Welcome back. So, as you can see in front of you, I've pushed ahead a little bit, and initially I was really wanting to show you all how I went about getting this wing together, but to be quite honest with you, if I take these drive engines off, to be quite honest with you, the wing is huge, it really is. A3 cut and mat, and that wing is bigger than the cut and mat by more than 30 mil, 2-inch. So it's a huge wing. I glued it together using the exact same methods as I did for the center section. The joints are really rather nice. I think you can see that. So center join, a little bit of super glue to help it kick off faster to get that grip. For filling the join, what I tend to like to do is use a little bit of stretched sprue that is just the size of the gap we've got to fill. Set it in there with Tamiya extra thin, and then let it dry off completely before I come back and sand it and mold it flat. The joints on the top of the wing, I think you can see, are quite nice. This had a little gap here that I filled just exactly the same way as the underside with a bit of stretch sprue, melted it into the gap, let it go completely cured, and then sanded it. Well, it's just with a scalpel blade I gently scraped it down and then finished it with sanding and buffing to get it back into the same texture as the rest of this fabric surface. And then this joint here, you can see, was very much the same, although it didn't need any filling. But on the whole, the wings have gone together beautifully. The trail and edge is quite in scale, and when they're together, it makes a really solid structure. Just huge. The tail planes, very simply, two half glued together. The molding was really nice, so there was no misalignment or anything like that, and they fitted really quite nicely on the tail fin. If I can get the angle on that, there we go. You can see they were nicely square, and went in a little bit of Mr. Surfacer just underneath here to fill a pity gap, but nothing deadly. And then obviously the worst bit of the kit was the misaligned tail. It's still a little bit misaligned, but what I've ended up doing is there was a terrible step gap here at the top, so I used my stretch sprue technique and I just put the stretch sprue in to take up the side that was low, let it cure off, and then I've sanded it back. I've still got to get my razor saw and just cut in that top edge there just to blend that in to make the pivot point. And then I've used some Mr. Surfacer just over this joint here just to fill in any small gaps and imperfections, and it's actually come really nice. Now, the elephant in the room is the dimension or dimensional inaccuracies of this kit, and this is the real downfall of this kit. Is this piece here on the tail is far too thick. It should nip in neater there and be thinner, but also I think if you look at the back of the fuselage here, it's a difficult one. It looks like it's flattened out here, that's too flat on the top. It should be more pronounced, but I think what the problem is the rear blisters are oversized and they're far too close together. They should be smaller and then further down on the side, leaving probably 3 times the gap here as there would. And I think if those were the right size and in scale, then this wouldn't look so bad, but I still think it looks a little flat in this section here. However, if you want a 48 scale Catalina, this is the only kit in town, so we're just going to have to put up with it, and it is what it is. It's a Catalina. Yes, we all know there's inaccuracies, but until somebody else, ICM, hint, come along, we'll just have to put up with it. There's a little bit of Mr. Surfacer in here, just where this obviously removable panel is in the mold for the amphibious version, for where they put the insert in, for where the wheel wells are. So a little bit of sanding. And the biggest job on this has actually been re-riveting. So obviously where we've gone in here to fill panel lines and that, we've lost some of the rivet detail. And I've just come back in with my Galaxy tools. And it's the 0.75 riveter wheel. These are really, really good tools. Readily available on eBay. Highly recommended on my part. I've got that one, and I've also got the larger spaced ones for the bigger models. But anyway, so here we are, all together nicely. Pretty much got the fuselage ready for painting nearly. I still got the instrument panel to go in, and I have test fitted it, so it will go in. So we'll look at that shortly. And I need to consider whether I'm going to remove this molded in mooring line to replace it with a more accurate piece of kit. So I think that's a job I still have to do, but we'll get round to that. Now, the next things I've done is clean these engines up. I've decided to use the kit ones because really when you get the cowling on like that, you're not actually going to see a huge amount. Well, you see a bit, but not a huge amount. But what you do see is actually, get that to focus, it's actually quite nice. You've got the cooling vane details there. You've got the push rods there. It's missing the magnetos on the reduction gearbox on the front of the engine. Final drive, whatever you want to call it. But what we do have to put on the engine from the photo etch fret is we've got a full wiring harness to put on, which is fantastic. So that's why I've decided to use the kit engines, purely because I can get away with using the wiring harness just to liven up the engine. So we'll paint the engines up first, and then we'll actually spray this, I think, on 60 degrees. I might spray it on the fret here, or we might just brush paint it. I don't know yet, but we're going to get onto that very, very shortly. So where are we at, I hear you say? Well, just to quickly discuss the last point about putting these wings together is with the size of it, there was a little bit of a twist in this center section, and I'll put a photo up just now. And then you can see from that photograph that I've obviously set the front of the engine up with a peg either side to clamp the two engine mounts together, and then along the back edge here I had it clamped to the straight of my I've got like an acrylic plastic workboard that my cutting mat sits into, but it acted as a jig, a straight edge jig, to straighten the warp out that was in this wing. And it's something, if you look at the photograph I put up, I recommend anybody building this kit to do the same thing, is get that something a straight edge that's going to correct any warpage on the center section. If you get the center section square, when you come to putting the outer wings on, then it lines up more naturally. But what you can do is a similar thing on the outer wing, is place the outer wing down on the straight edge and then close peg it to the straight edge, and that will then get your geometry perfect. And this wing really is as square as you like. It's got the square center section, flat on the top, and then a slight rise up to the point. So the profile's really quite good. So yeah, really happy with that. So next job we have to do is engines. I've also built off camera, simply glued together the two wing float halves and give them a clean up. I do have the Edard photo etch set coming for these, because I'm going to be displaying this with these down, so I want as much detail as possible. I've got to take the rest of the parts off, but this is the kit that has the extended exhaust shrouded exhaust on the engines. So there's one per each engine. And then we've got the depth charges to glue together and let cure up. We've also got to look at, obviously, the instrument panel. I've discussed that. And then we've got to look at the waste gun positions to see about getting those painted and detailed, well, constructed, painted and detailed, to then put them to side. I've got a mask set coming with the photo etch set for the canopy, so we can mask the inside of the canopy and then fix the quadrant controls, so the throttle controls on the upper canopy, and then we can think about getting that all together, and then we're pretty much ready to go to paint. And there is the next big quandary. I'll probably discuss it again when we come to paint, but there's a number. Well, if you look at the Model Alliance decal call out for this aircraft, it's calling out insignia white for the tail and all the underside surfaces and half the fuselage side, and on the upper surface it's calling extra dark sea grey. And I actually think this is incorrect. Now, I've done a lot of research, and I think I've found at least 2 photographs of 210 Catalinas at RAF at Sullomvo. And in the photographs, although they're black and white, there is an apparent camouflage line in the upper surfaces, so you can actually see the different shading between the slate grey and the extra dark sea grey. I've seen a number of these models built up, and there's obviously been a couple of historic flight Catalinas flying in JV928's colours. The flying aircrafts had this in the earlier camouflage scheme of extra dark sea grey and slate grey. So it's that like blue, grey and green camouflage when it's sun bleached. What I found with doing my research is that this particular colour scheme was introduced to the Coastal Command aircraft September 1st, 1944. Well, the action that John Cruickshank fought was on the 17th of July, 1944, and that colour scheme that he would have been flying with was the two-tone camo on the upper surfaces. So that's the way I'm going to go. So it looks like I'm not going the way the instructions are calling out, but I actually believe I'll be painting the correct colour scheme on this aircraft. I stand to be corrected if anybody else has more definitive information, but that's what I've managed to find out, and I'm happy just to go with it. So enough of my rambling on. Let's clear the bench a little bit. We can look at getting the first coat of black on the engines before we dry brush. We'll look at putting together the rest of the sort of ancillary stuff and taking the build forward.